I'm Samantha Banks. I'm one of the attorneys at Indiana Estate and Elder Law. And this month for our July blog is about me and about my husband, Skylar, and our family, and kind of how I got into estate planning as a practice area and kind of our own estate planning journey. So go ahead, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, I'm Skylar. I am the husband of this beautiful lady, Samantha.
I paid him to say that. Yes, I did. Anyway, so initially when I graduated law school, I started out doing family law. I didn't necessarily want to do divorce, but I saw a lot of injustice in our family law system and just how child custody and child support and just how those issues were handled. So I was really passionate about that, and I also wanted to do adoption. And so I did that for some years. And then I witnessed my parents have a very hard time with their estate plan. I call it their botched estate plan. Essentially, they had an attorney in another state. They don't live in Indiana, but they had an attorney in another state draft an estate plan for them. And then when they went back and reviewed that estate plan, they found several things that were included in their trust that they did not ask for, nor did they want. Essentially, it gave that firm full control over the assets when they passed away. And so it took almost a year for them to undo that mess. And so when I watched them go through that, it really pushed me to change my practice area. Obviously I'm still passionate about certain family law issues, but just watching my parents go through that, I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. And I knew that, I could find the right firm and the right group, and I would do everything I could to prevent somebody else from experiencing what they did. So that's kind of how I got into estate planning as a practice area. But truly, our estate planning journey really stems from one of two things. Number one, my family is very good about having open conversations about planning for long-term care and planning for what happens after death. So I am used to my family having those conversations around me, even before I became an attorney. So I've always known that it's important. I'm fortunate in that way because I know not everybody's family is like that. But also I need to practice what I preach, right? I can't sit in the conference room and educate clients and tell them why they need certain things, and then not take my own advice. So that's kind of where our journey started. And we have kiddos. We have 3 girls, and they're still young. Our oldest is 14. Our youngest is 3. And then we have a middle daughter who is 9. So they're still young, but, we know that we want to set them up for success and make sure that they're okay and taken care of when that time comes. So that was another driving force behind our own estate plan. So, honey, I'll go ahead and give you the floor and kind of let you talk about your experiences with estate planning and kind of how you kind of bring a different perspective to those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. So my experience with the estate plan is relatively new, just because whereas she had the ability to talk about those things and were constantly exposed to those, I was not. It's has taken me some time to really get used to talking about end of life, what happens whenever we get older. So with that, I kind of just had to follow her lead. I really don't necessarily like talking about end of life or having long-term care because that's something that really hurts. It's something that even though me personally, I've experienced a lot of, I don't like talking about it because it's me and then it's my wife and our family, and that brings a totally different perspective for me. So with that, I just kind of gathered and followed her lead, gathered all the information I possibly could, and kind of just asked questions. And with those questions, it really opened my eyes into this just isn't something that you do for end of life. It really benefits you while you are living, and the things you are able to, the things you will accomplish while you're living, that whenever it's your time to go, because we all have that time that we will leave this earth physically, that you're, if you have kids or if you don't have kids, your family members that precede you will benefit from and have something to remember you by. So that's just my intake and my input into estate planning.
Yeah. So, obviously, estate planning can be incredibly emotional, because it does bring up those hard conversations, right? Some people are more comfortable talking about death and what happens during that time. Obviously, I talk about it every day, with clients. So, it's really no big deal. Whereas it's very hard for him to talk about those things. And so when we were designing our own trust and designing our own plan, those were some hard conversations, just trying to get him to make a decision, and trying to get him to visualize, okay, I know it's painful for you to think about this scenario and this situation, but I need you to do it. I need you to kind of push through that, because we never know what's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. So if that situation does happen, what are you going to do, right? What's your ideal picture? How can you try and make a hard situation or a bad situation better? Because right now we have the control, right? We have the ability to kind of paint that picture. Yeah, sure, it's not something that anybody wants to, jump right in and think about all the time, but at least now we're like, okay, if this happens, we have the ability and the control to put people in place and to put language in place that says, this is how we prefer things to be handled, right? Yeah. So part of that is living documents. So durable power of attorney, which is legal and financial decision making, healthcare representative, which is medical decision making, and then a living will, which is essentially the feeding tube document. Surprisingly enough, when we got married, he did not, or both of us, we did not inherently get authority to make financial decisions for each other, which is weird and interesting, because as a married couple, we're empowered to do everything else for each other, but finances and legal decision making is not one of those unless you purposely delegate that authority. And so obviously for living documents, for healthcare representative, and for power of attorney, we are each other's first choice. But then we also put some backups. And one of the ways that we chose to, or one of the ways that we made the decision on who was going to be a backup is, who in our life is financially responsible, financially sound, who do we feel comfortable with, and their own financial decisions in their own life, right? I'm not going to choose somebody that has significant financial issues or addictions that would affect, their financial decisions. Those are very real things to consider, because you want to choose somebody that's responsible, and it doesn't have to be family. There are several people named in our plan that are not family members. They're not related to either one of us, but they are incredibly close friends of ours that we trust. Not only do we trust them with our finances and what's best, what would be best for us in those decisions, but we also trust them with our girls. And one of the things that we talked about is, it was very easy to choose a guardian for our children if something was were to happen to us. But then we're sitting here and we're kind of trying to figure out, well, who's going to be who's going to make the right decision if I have a medical issue? And it's like, it was so easy for me to make the choice for my kids. So why is it so difficult for me to choose a backup for medical decisions or for financial decisions? So we also use that to kind of narrow down. If we trust these people with our children, then certainly we could trust them with our finances. But it doesn't have to be family. And at the end of the day, it's your plan. So you don't have to do anybody any favors. You're not obligated to make certain people, give them certain roles in your plan. And it's changeable, right? So it's fluid. It's not something that's set in stone. It's etched in stone, and it can never be changed. And that's important for us because, our girls won't be little forever. And so eventually when they grow into adulthood and they're responsible women, we're more than likely going to amend those documents and give them a role. And I know for me specifically, that's important to me. I want them to be involved, and I trust my girls, and they each have their own gifts. They each have their own gifts, their own talents. So it doesn't have to be the oldest child. It doesn't have to be the same child for everything. You can really make it your own, depending on your own family situation. Do you have anything else to add to that, honey?
I do not, outside of the fact of it's not just a piece of paper. I realize it means so much more. So if you are looking and it's hard for you, like it is for me still to this day, to have those tough conversations, like you can ask an attorney. I mean, my wife here is a perfect example of that. So I would say just reach out and ask if you don't have anyone, and it does you some good. It definitely helps.
And we offer free initial consultations. So there's no excuse. Come ask me. We're happy to talk to you. And the first meeting is complimentary. So you can at least see what your options are. And we can kind of help point you in the right direction, and kind of, if you're worried about having those conversations with family, or if you're not sure, who to name in your documents or who would be a right fit, we're happy to talk to you about that and help encourage you and point you in the right direction. Kind of walking through this process has been, it's given me new insight into my clients, because anytime I meet with a client, it is always about two things. It is always, these are my goals, right? This is my goal. This is what I want to try. This is what I want to try to accomplish. And at the same time, these are my fears. This is what I'm scared of. I don't want this to happen. I'm scared that this is going to happen. I'm scared that my kids won't be taken care of. I'm scared that long-term care is going to suck all my assets away. So it's really those two themes, right? What are my goals? This is what I want to accomplish. And these are my fears, right? And I don't know how to reconcile those two. And so going through this process, I was in the client's shoes. Now I was, I'm still got my attorney hat on. I'm still looking at it from an attorney's perspective, but it forced us to face those two same things, right? What are our goals and what are we scared of? And so it was incredibly humbling, because I was able to look through my client's eyes at this process. And it's, I don't take for granted how privileged we are at the fact that we have direct access to legal resources. Not just me and my mind, but the rest of the attorneys here at the firm and the team here. So that is a blessing that I don't take for granted. So being able to step in a client's shoes has been both enlightening, and I think it's made me a better attorney for it.